I've been able to work with the Oregon legislature and with our state employees. When I announced my candidacy late last winter, I only had a few committed supporters and my ideas for Oregon. Making our great state a dream we all know it can be. It was a little lonely at the start, but as I traveled the state, listening to people's ideas and expressing my own, something happened. Slowly at first, then faster and faster, I felt this crowd building behind me, kind of a groundswell of support. It carried me through the primary, into summer, to this very room today. The polls show it. I hear people talking about it. People are becoming more aware of the work I've done as a legislator, helping the disadvantaged and to improve medical and health care, of my history of working to protect and preserve our environment. People have recognized the work I've already started on tax relief and my outspoken stand on delivering the services promised that has echoed their yearning for many years. It's just that what I dream for Oregon future mirrors Oregonians' dreams. I feel good about it. I'm proud because your vote is truly a bridge to a better tomorrow. And that's what my candidacy is all about. I think I'm the leader who is best prepared to meet the challenge of matching the people's priorities for Oregon's tomorrow. Together, we'll shape the future, a new future, something better than today, a realizable hope for the future, a dream we can afford. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Atiyeh. Governor Straub.
Mr. Beeman, Senator Victor Atiyeh. In the year 1837, Ralph Waldo Emerson, speaking at Harvard, said, "This time, like all other times, is a very good time if we but know what to do with it." I believe that this is a very good time for the people of Oregon. It is a good time because our economy is strong and our unemployment is declining. It is a good time because our resources are preserved, the beaches are free, and the rivers are clean. It is a good time because we have the opportunity to lower the taxes of Oregon, to reduce government spending, and put money back into people's pockets. It can be the best of times if we do not allow a California haunt to haunt an Oregon future. If we have an Oregon plan to meet Oregon's needs, it can be the best of times. This year, 200,000 of us spoke with a clear and a direct message. Our homes are endangered, our livelihoods are in jeopardy, our mortgages mortgaged, our homes are mortgaged, and we want help now. Our homeowners and renters want tax relief, and they want the certainty that the homes they live in today will be affordable tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. They must have tax relief, and they must have it now. We must honor these citizens for having their names on the petition line and answer but one question. How can it best be done? The Oregon way or the California way? Now comes the test of leadership. I was told that my political career would be ended if I called a session of the legislature to seek an Oregon alternative to Measure 6. I was told that I was putting my neck out if I recommended an Oregon approach to the California initiative. Let me say to you something that you all already know about the people of Oregon. They respect strong talk and strong action over waffling. They admire taking issues head on instead of ducking. They understand that conscience must triumph over expediency. I say to you, Measure 6 is a bad tax measure for Oregon. Not only because it may be locked up in the courts for a number of years, but because it rewards the rich at the cost of the middle class, because it punishes our future generations because it mortgages our tomorrow for a few dollars saved today. We need an Oregon plan that will be clearly superior to ballot measure number 6 in terms of property tax relief, that will be fair in providing adequate tax relief for homeowners and renters, that will be constitutional in order to meet measure 6 head on, and it must put a constitutional limitation on state and local spending. If we are able to find the Oregon way for property tax relief, then tomorrow is safe, our vision is undimmed. Let me tell you of my vision and the things I want for my children and my children's children. I want them to be able to share my wife's and my joy of backpacking in Oregon's magnificent wilderness areas. I want them to enjoy Oregon's unique communities which have protected and preserved their heritage in both their buildings and their environment. I want them to be able to visit our metropolitan areas and enjoy the excitement of these vibrant cultural, commercial, and human centers of Oregon. I want them to have the opportunity to breathe clean air, have clean water, and a clean land. I want them to have equal opportunities for jobs in an economically strong Oregon. I want them to enjoy the same values in the Oregon of tomorrow that brought my wife and me to Oregon 30 years ago. I said initially that this is a very good time if we but know what to do with it. And it is a very good time, for this is the moment that we challenge the courage of people. As Thomas Paine said in The Crisis in December of 1776, these are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the summer patriot will in this crisis shrink from the service of his country. But he that stands it now deserves the love and thanks of men and women. For the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. The challenge of leadership is clear. Who do we want for governor? A man who worries about the next election, or a man who works for the next generation?
Thank you very much. We will now shift to our question and answer format. We'll do that seated from the tables. In accordance with our format, Senator Atiyeh will address the first question to the governor. The governor will have 1 minute to answer. Senator Atiyeh then has the privilege of a rejoinder to that, and if the governor chooses, he may again respond for 1 minute. We will do that in alternate form with each candidate asking the other 2 questions. Senator Atiyeh, you're first.
Mr. Straub, it took 115 years under 30 different governors for Oregon's general fund budget to reach $1 billion in 1974. In just 4 years since you took office, the state budget has doubled to approximately $2 billion. Obviously, this huge increase can't be explained by inflation or population growth. In light of your statement on October 20th, 1974, you quoted, "You have to hold down budget increases as tight as possible and review state agencies to cut out waste and duplication. I think budget cuts can be made almost everywhere." How do you then, that's the end of the quote, how do you then justify the growth, and or what waste and duplication have you eliminated?
I want to reaffirm what I said in October of '74, and I do believe and have worked to hold down government costs in the state of Oregon. The major reason for the increase in the budgets is because of increase in funding to lower local property taxes in the state of Oregon. For example, I've increased basic school support 45% since I've been in Oregon. In the governor's office. $617 million in this biennium is being spent for local school support. I wasn't through yet.
Senator Atiyeh, do you have a rejoinder or further statement?
I may just leave it there so he can't go any further. As a matter of fact, I think I will leave it there.
Okay, the privilege of asking the next question is with you, Governor Straub.
Senator Atiyeh, as you know, I've taken a firm stand in opposition to ballot measure number 6. I have said that it is not an Oregon plan, that it is not fair to the people of Oregon, and that it endangers Oregon's future with a California initiative. In contrast, I cannot help but point out what the Oregon Statesman has said in an editorial which they wrote and ran in their paper on August 28th, and I read, "Straub is putting his neck on the line for what he honestly believes is in the best interest of the people of the state. His response stands in sharp contrast to that of his opponent, State Senator Victor Atiyeh." Did everybody hear that, or shall I read it again? Atiyeh has waffled on Measure 6 from the beginning and has contented himself with taking shots at whatever Straub does and says without committing himself in return. Senator, do you have a position on ballot measure 6?
I do have a position as stated and, of course, represented by my testimony to the Senate committee. 200,000 Oregonians signed a petition of a certain way they wanted property tax relief, their way of doing it. I believed it was our job to amend that bill. I made that specific recommendation, and as a matter of fact, it only failed in the Senate, in the House yesterday by a tie vote. It would have passed yesterday in the House had it included renters. I believe I'm going the direction that 200,000 and more Oregonians want me to go. That's the way I'm going to continue to go.
In 1974, you refused to say that you were against a sales tax. Is one of the reasons you're now backing Measure 6 because you think it will be easier to pass a sales tax if Measure 6 passes?
Mr. Straub, you're not going to do this to me again. I said that I was opposed to a sales tax. I have been opposed to the sales tax. The governor knows that I'm opposed to a sales tax. I think the people of Oregon know that I'm opposed to a sales tax. I think this is extraneous, dragging up from last session, and I'm not going to get in that same trap again. I just want it clear that that's where I am and have been for my 20 years as a legislator.
Senator Atiyeh, you may
Yes.
now ask your second question.
Coincidentally, I'm in the same area as the governor's question to me, and my question deals, and it's interesting how one views leadership, with the lack of leadership and gross inconsistencies of your stand on property tax relief. Speaking to Oregon mayors in Baker on July 15th, you announced your opposition to the language of ballot measure number 6. More importantly, I think you stated you opposed the principle of this property tax relief. On August 10th, following a 3-day campaign swing, you announced, quote, "Property tax relief is more prominent in the minds of people than I thought." That same week, a GMA poll showed you losing ground, a full 20% points behind in the governor's race. What followed was a call for a special session and your sudden support for property tax relief. If this action was not politically motivated, then please explain the recent change of heart.
I've always said, as long as I'm behind in the polls, that the polls don't mean anything, Senator Atiyeh. I have consistently opposed Measure 6 with the degree of intensity increasing the more I studied the measure and the more I realized how damaging it would be to the people of the state of Oregon and how unfair it was to the people of the state of Oregon. And it was for this reason I felt I could not stand on the sidelines and let the people have only this as a measure to vote on to get property tax relief. And this is the reason I convened the special session of the legislature, to give the people a choice for fair, equitable property tax relief in the state of Oregon and a limit on spending at all levels.
You have a rejoinder to that, or? Governor, the last question is yours.
As you know, Senator, I have been a strong supporter of Oregon's land use laws. I've taken a firm position in opposition to ballot measure 10 because it would undermine Oregon's land use laws, take away our best tool for balanced growth, and destroy the investment we've made up today in our land use laws. In contrast, Senator, at the League of Oregon Cities meeting in Baker, you said that you did not fear ballot measure 10, that you were very comfortable with a good deal of it, but you were not completely satisfied with a portion of the measure. If you now have a position on ballot measure number 10, would you mind stating what it is?
I do have a position, but at this point will not state it, and I'll tell you why. I asked the opponents of the measure some time ago if they would give me some information. It's been well over a month. I personally think it's the fairest thing to do to listen to everyone, and I'm sure they will deliver that information to me. They have not yet. So in fairness, which I believe is what all Oregonians ought to have, that opportunity, they requested, I asked for their position on ballot measure 6 in one particular. They have not yet done it. Until that time, it's not fair that I should make my answer. Fair to them, that is.
Governor?
In late May, the AOI had an executive meeting in Salem to discuss the issue of whether the AOI would support this ballot measure number 10 being put on the ballot. Excuse me, it was not, yes, it was in late May. I appeared to strongly oppose the stand of the AOI, which at that time was in support of putting ballot measure number 10 on the ballot. And I opposed it on the strength that it would destroy land use planning in the state of Oregon. Senator Atiyeh, you were invited to attend this meeting also, and you did not appear. Can you say why you were not there to speak in behalf of your interests?
Yes, I was not invited to attend that. I did talk, however, to the chairman of the committee on the telephone. There was no request for me to be there. I expressed my concerns, as you did, Governor, about some of the elements in that measure, some views I thought they ought to consider. They said that they would. I presume they did.
Thank you very much. That completes that series of the questions. We will now open to questions that have been submitted by our members. Herb Crane and I will alternate in asking the questions. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to the question as asked. The first question is for you, Governor Straub, or you're first on the first question.
Governor Straub, do you have a position with respect to Senator Jackson's, that's federal Senator Jackson's power proposal in Congress? And please explain it.
Yes, I do have, and it's in support of Senator Jackson's proposal. I think it's very, very beneficial to the state of Oregon because it would cut in half the differential between privately sold Bonneville power and publicly sold Bonneville power, and in 5 years it would eliminate the differential entirely. This is tremendous, of tremendous benefit to people in Oregon because 80% of our people in Oregon are served by the private power companies. I'm doing what I can to support this measure. I want to point out that DERPA, which is a bill that I had in the legislature and the legislature approved, and I want to commend Senator Victor Atiyeh for supporting it in the legislature, that DERPA laid the groundwork for Senator Jackson's regional energy bill because it recognized the fact that domestic and rural customers were entitled to preferred treatment from Bonneville. I support the measure. It'll be good for the people of Oregon.
I think it's significant that Senator Jackson is the leader in the measure, and yes, I do support it. Significant in the fact that the state of Washington had to agree to what is important to us as Oregonians, as well as those in the Northwest, that there be a Northwest policy. That's the objective that I have worked for. The governor suggested I did support DERPA. As a matter of fact, I probably was the only supporter on the committee for a long time of his idea among his colleagues. I think it's a good idea. There is room for public input, states being able to participate in the process, an opportunity for Oregonians to pay less for their power cost. It is significant that Senator Jackson now has agreed to it. I think now we have a good chance of passage.
Next question is addressed to you first, Senator Atiyeh. What is your position on the ballot measure to reinstate the death penalty?
I support the ballot measure to reinstitute the death penalty. I've said so publicly, but I do because, for two reasons. First, let me say that it's not that I want to take a life, I want to save a life. And I believe that capital punishment is a deterrent to the crime of murder. Second, but and especially important, is that there is a separate judicial process for anyone that faces execution. When I proposed that in '74 and now, and incidentally during the legislative session, that always had to be an important part of that package. Without it, I could not support it.
I'm
Straub?
strongly, completely, and unalterably opposed to the death penalty in the state of Oregon. And I'm aware of the fact that a recent poll in Portland showed that 9 to 1 of the people supported the death penalty in the state of Oregon, but I'm against it for 3 major reasons. One is that there has never been a shred of evidence that its existence deters crime. We've had 4 times in Oregon that we've had the death penalty, and you cannot see any variation between the commitment of major crimes in Oregon between the times when we had the death penalty and when we didn't. And the other reason is the fact that only the poor are put to death. No time in history has a member of a wealthy family been put to death in any of the nation's states. And I'm against any kind of a system whose justice varies with the economic wealth of the person involved. And the third reason is a moral reason. I do not want to be part of a society that puts other people to death.
Governor Straub, your answer first, please. To what extent should the state support local education?
Well, I think it should strive to increase its support until it reaches 50%. It was at 27% when I took office. It now is at 40%. We're moving. I doubt with the property tax relief programs that are being considered that we'll be able to increase the percentage in the next biennium. But I think that the state should continue to struggle and strive to increase basic school support until the state is paying 50%.
For 20 years, as the question was asked, and it has been asked for all that period of time, I've said that I would support education from the state government up to, but not to exceed, 50%. I've supported all of the measures that dealt not only with basic school support, but a revised distribution system fairer to all school districts, certainly the school district in this area specifically. I think both of those are important. I think also, however, that as the governor had indicated, with one of the bills that may pass and the huge amount of money that will go out of the state treasury, it would be very difficult to do much more than 40 if we can do that.
Senator Atiyeh, according to recent surveys, state support of the arts in Oregon is currently at a very modest level compared to other states, about 10 cents per capita. What do you see as the role of government in assisting the arts in Oregon generally? And if elected, would you endorse greater funding for the arts, for instance, through the Oregon Arts Commission?
I think art is a very important thing in our society and our culture. My family, my children, my wife, and to a lousy degree me, like art. But I think that it's important that a state in all areas, and we're speaking of art now, but in many other areas, can take a leadership role in saying we are, in fact, interested in it. In terms of increasing the budget, I will stop short of that. Again, we have a very dramatic bill that's before us. We are awaiting judgment by the Senate today and decision by the Oregon legislature today or tomorrow. And I'm not sure that anyone that promises any increases in any budgets at this point in time is being fair and realistic with people. If that opportunity does exist, it is allowed and permitted under our budgetary process, I certainly would.
Governor Straub?
I support and have supported the arts during my term in office because I think it's an important part of the fabric of this state. The budget for the Oregon Art Commission has increased many-fold in the 3.5 years that I've been in office. Plus, I have a monthly display of the Artist of the Month in the Capitol or in the governor's reception office, and we have a reception for the artist, and I've done everything I can to focus attention on the importance of the arts. I've supported the 1% fund for all public buildings to have included for art. I think that the function, the need is very important. I've committed myself to supporting a direct appropriation for the 4 major cultural institutions of Oregon: the Shakespeare Festival, the Oregon Symphony, the Portland Art Museum, and the Portland, what was the 4th? The operas, thank you, the Portland Opera.
That was my question, so now it's yours to Straub, right?
Okay, yes.
I'm glad you...
Governor, should I laugh or should I ask? At a recent City Club meeting, the Deputy Public Utility Commissioner proposed the creation of a state position of consumer advocate for residential energy consumers. Would you support such a position?
Yes, I would support a consumer advocate for the utility area, because the utility rates are very burdensome to the people of the state of Oregon because of the fact that 80% of the people are served by the private power companies. I think a consumer advocate could go a long way toward keeping surveillance on the costs of generating electricity and supplying it, and could help to keep the rates lower than they otherwise might be.
I've asked the question of those that have proposed it to us and talked to me about support of it in the Oregon legislature. The question I asked is, which consumer will they advocate? Which position will they advocate? That's assuming there's only one position. Presume there are 2 or 3 positions. Does this person advocate all 3 positions? Or do we have 3 people advocating 3 positions? And what small a number do we have before we have an advocate for that position? I'm not trying to interfere with the process. It's so easy to say, yes, there ought to be a consumer advocate, but there's always a presumption there's only one position. There are bound to be more than one positions, more attitudes, and how will they be voiced before the Public Utility Commission? I'm going to suggest in a constructive sense that we have a 3-member commission rather than 1 person. The decision of some awesome decisions are left in the hands of 1 person. It's neither fair to that 1 person or the public. I think it's a better way to address the problem.
Okay, next question. Senator Atiyeh, what is your position on ballot measure number 7, which would prohibit use of state funds for abortion?
I declared myself, when we were here, I think, last time, that I oppose unrestricted abortion because I felt it was used as a contraceptive device in many instances. However, there is a state law that does allow abortion on demand. I did not vote for the bill, but it is a state law. I became very uncomfortable with the idea that some people could take advantage of state law and others couldn't. Therefore, on a narrowed base as to who could receive welfare funds from the state, and under the set of circumstances I hope someday will be put in which all alternatives, not just the abortion alternative, be suggested, that it would be necessary to fund abortion from welfare money. Therefore, in spite of what I said earlier, and because of what I said later, I do not support the ballot measure. If you remember what I said.
Governor Straub?
Well, I'm with Vic, I think. We have abortions, have had legalized abortions in Oregon since 1969 under very strict controls. If a doctor judges that a woman's mental or physical health is endangered, he can perform an abortion in the first 5 months. If the doctor determines that a child may be born deformed physically or mentally, an abortion can be performed. If the pregnancy is a result of incest or rape, an abortion can be performed. I am opposed to ballot measure number 7 because I believe that all women, poor as well as the well-to-do, should have the same choice under the law to have an abortion under the conditions that are legal in the state of Oregon.
Governor Straub, the recently released TriMet staff recommendations for the construction of a light rail transit system for the Banfield corridor recommends that funding include $17.5 million from state general funds. Would you support such state involvement?
I'm waiting to see the reaction of local governmental units. I think the decision should be made by TriMet, then by the city, by the county, by Gresham, before the state is involved. But if the local governmental units all endorse the light rail system, then I will support it and do what I can to obtain the necessary funding out of the general fund. The $17.5 million would be spread over 3 biennia. It would mean about $5 to $6 million of biennia for this purpose. I would support it, but I also recognize that there'd have to be some trade-offs with the upstate areas so that the upstate legislators wouldn't feel that all of these benefits are going to the Portland metropolitan area. But I will support it if the local governmental units support it.
Senator?
This comes at a very, very difficult time. The people of the state of Oregon turned down a gas tax increase for maintenance of our highways, which in fact are deteriorating. There is a push now, as a matter of fact, to get more out of the Department of Transportation's budget, out like the other half of state police, parks, so that they free up more money to do what's necessary around the state of Oregon. I know around the state of Oregon, because I've been there, that the roads are in bad shape and need help. As to the priority of a light rail system into that which is now being introduced on top of all the problems that already exist statewide, I would tell you I'd have to look at it very, very carefully, and there'd have to be extremely strong support, not just from the leadership, but from the people in this area.
Senator Atiyeh, how do you preserve the public interest in the face of increasingly aggressive public employee unions?
I think you're speaking to me as a governor, and the governor is a governor in that respect, if that were the case. A governor does represent actually two groups, the public and the people that work for the governor. I think the best way to deal with this whole subject, and it sounds naive, but I believe in it, that if we deal in good faith with our state employees, if we talk with them and have them understand that they are taxpayers as well as state employees, that we can honestly deal with them. To say the fact that they are in a union and therefore is some kind of an evil, I do not agree with. They have that right by state law, and I think it's worthy for us to protect it, but at the same time recognize that we have budgetary problems for other programs in Oregon, and that all people in Oregon must be treated equally.
During my term in office, I've successfully negotiated with the OSCA for all the state employees in two separate contracts, or contracts at two separate times. And this has, of course, required a lot of give and take, a lot of negotiation, a lot of wrestling, a lot of arm twisting, which is part of the process. But we have come up with a contract that is fair and within the limits of the cost of living index. I believe that if management is tough and firm and representing the public and working for the public, rather than management is trying to knuckle in and curry favor, that the system can work in Oregon and will work in Oregon.
Governor, a simple question. Do you believe the state should get out of the liquor business?
In part. In part. I think the state should leave the retail distribution of liquor to private enterprise, and I'm going to recommend this to the next legislature. This is the recommendation of the Blue Ribbon Committee that I appointed. And I'm also going to recommend that the state should abolish the permit system so that any Class A, first-class restaurant would, legitimate restaurant, would have the opportunity of serving mixed drinks if it so choose, so long as it complied with the law. I think that we put too strict a damper on the liquor industry in the state of Oregon. I believe that private enterprise can do a better job distributing at the retail level than is now being done by the state.
Senator Atiyeh.
You're all looking for differences, and here's another one. I do not agree with the governor in this respect. I believe, in fact, that although the Oregon Liquor Control Commission does a minimal amount of control, that restrictions should not be removed from the sale of liquor. I know that the consumption in free, quote, free states is 14 to 23% higher than it is in the state of Oregon. I am fully aware of the dangers and the trauma and the cost to all of us because of the consumption of liquor through automobile accidents and broken homes. I'm not one who believes that no one drinks, nor no one drinks heavily. I know that takes place. But to remove all of the brakes is something that I will not do as governor of the state of Oregon. I will, however, look for the changes that constructively remove the dangers that were in the present OLCC. and there are some good recommendations. This one is not among them.
Senator Atiyeh, if State Measure 6 passes, local governments will probably request more revenue sharing from the state general fund to make up for those lost property tax revenues. How much additional state aid would you support?
Actually, what I would do if number 6 passes is what I said I would do, and that is to propose the amendments which I have before the Oregon legislature now. The first effect of which would be to cut that quote loss by half, $430 million. Then take care of some of the others. I would ask for a special election while we are in session to fix up those deficiencies in ballot measure 6 that exists. And I've said that, and I would do that. In that event, we're talking, excuse me, of $430 million. I then would ask local governments to reduce the general size of their budget. I would look at both our surplus and some reductions in state government budget and fund not all of it, but a good portion of it, because I think people are saying all of us tighten our belts. Let's not kill off local government, and that I believe.
I think ballot measure number 6 is so flawed that it's beyond repair, and this is why I'm hoping that an alternate tax measure will be on the ballot in good shape and will be fair and will receive the support of the people in Oregon who want and deserve property tax relief. If, however, 6 is passed, I'll do the best that I can do to make it work. I won't try to thwart the will of the people. I'll try to implement and make effective what the people want done and what they've voted for. And I would try to provide some state monies, as much as we could squeeze out of state budgets, so that it would be available to local governmental units, including schools. But it would not be enough, and I'm sure it would not be enough to take care of the full loss of tax revenues, and so it would require a cutback in services on the local level, as well as a receipt of revenues from the state level.
Governor Straub, do you believe the state should distinguish between business and industry already located in Oregon and new business located outside the state that is considering moving into Oregon?
No, sir, I don't. I think that industry that's here should be helped as much as they need help, and I think that industry not here should be encouraged to come if it's a high technology, non-polluting type of industry. Since I've been in office, we have brought into Oregon 55 new companies that are in this category, and they're providing a tremendous boost to employment. This is one of the reasons we've lowered unemployment from 12.5% when I took office to 4.8% in June of this year. We also need to serve the industry that's already here, and I'm working very hard to do that. I presided at a dedication of a very large expansion of an industry in Newburgh yesterday, a $127 million addition to the pulp mill, and the president of Time Mirror said the reason they're making this commitment in Oregon is because they have confidence in Oregon and they like the climate that we have here in this state. I like to think that I've had something to do with developing a positive climate in Oregon so that industry can thrive.
Small business in Oregon, which represents 80% of the employment in this state, do not share that feeling of confidence that the governor just indicated. It may very well be that some of the large businesses do, but that's the problem. As a matter of fact, if we're really talking about encouraging business to expand, and again, remind you that we as small business people do employ 80% or more of the people, government is getting in our way. Government, in fact, is not helping us. If government would do what government did, that is city, county, and state government, that we did for Wacker Chemical, we would be, in fact, in good shape. But in spite of what the governor says, I can tell you from my own knowledge that we don't feel that way. And if he says that he does, it so far has not been demonstrated to us. And I think it's time for a change in that area.
Senator Atiyeh, in light of the recent publicity about these programs, what do you think of the progress of the Oregon Scenic Rivers and Willamette Greenway programs, and do you believe further actions are desirable?
I believe, as far as I can tell, that both of them are moving along quite well. There is legislation in both areas for protecting the scenic rivers and the Willamette Greenway itself. The acquisition, as best I can again understand, within the limits of the money that's available, acquisitions are being made. The only unfortunate thing about the whole Greenway program is that local government was supposed to come up with their plans in regard to their view of that section. And I've heard repeatedly, and I'm sorry to say that I heard it, that these plans were ignored. Nonetheless, it is moving along. It is not being destroyed. The farmers along the river were the greatest stewards that in fact allowed that Willamette River to be there for us to preserve. And I think in conjunction with them, it can be.
I support the Scenic Rivers bill. I supported Senator Don Wilner's effort to get it on the ballot, which he successfully achieved. And I think we need to continue to put rivers on the Scenic River system. I also support the Willamette Greenway since I conceived the idea in the campaign during 1966. We're making headway slowly. Ultimately, I hope that we can have a wilderness corridor between Portland and Eugene so that people's recreational experiences and out-of-door opportunities can be close at hand rather than having to drive clear up into the Cascades. I think the Willamette Greenway is a dream that is worthy of our commitment and our continued efforts. It's necessary that we take measures to see to it that our scenic rivers are protected. And I want to tell you that I'm very concerned about the Illinois River down in Josephine County. The Coos-Curry Electric Co-op wants to build a high dam on the Illinois River, and the Illinois River is on the scenic river system. And I want to tell you that I think this would be a disaster if they were to have their way, and I'm opposed to it.
Governor, do you think the initiative process in Oregon... I'm sorry, Governor.
Were those raspberries for me or the river?
For me. I'm sorry. Do you think the initiative process in Oregon is being misused or overused?
No, I don't think it's being either misused or overused. I think the opportunity and the freedom that the people have in Oregon to express their views is a very healthy one. It's indigenous to the Oregon political scene, and I would do nothing to change it. I only applaud the vigor of the citizens who have the initiative to go out and sponsor initiative measures that they're concerned about.
Senator?
Initiative and referendum is a real genius of Oregon. It's one in which Oregonians, as they call themselves, are a populous state and want to speak on every issue, have that opportunity. We really should in no way blunt that opportunity. It's a great one. We're proud of it. It's working, as we know, and people are excited about involvement, and that's good.
Senator Atiyeh, what do you think of Oregon's present correctional system, and what do you intend to propose regarding it at next year's legislative session?
As a senator.
That's on his time, not mine.
We stopped the
I
watch.
will ask Citizen Straub to help me in a program that's designed to keep people out of our corrections system. During the years I've been in the Oregon legislature, we have been obsessed about what we do with the criminal once we get them. And it's time we become obsessed with keeping people out of the system so we won't have to deal with that. It needs to be a constructive program, which I outlined carefully before the district attorneys, a constructive program to break that chain of crime, particularly when we see that 53% of all the felonies are committed by people 18 years and younger, a tragedy in our society. My emphasis as governor is going to be to keep them out of our system so we won't have to be talking about building bigger prisons or regional facilities.
Hoyt Cupp, the warden at the penitentiary, said recently that there's been more progress made in the last 4 years in the area of corrections in all the 35 years he's worked for corrections in the state of Oregon. I'm trying, and the legislature has been cooperative, to shift the focus of our corrections so that more Class C prisoners or minor felons are dealt with on the community, on the local level. Multnomah County, for example, is one of the cooperating counties. Some prisoners are of such a type that they should never be let out of the penitentiary, but some prisoners are of such a type they should never go into the penitentiary. And I want a system where those type of felons who have committed crimes that are minor in nature are dealt with on the community level. And I also want to do the same thing with juveniles. I think we institutionalize far too many juveniles in the state of Oregon. But we're moving in Oregon, and I want to keep us moving in Oregon in the direction of a more enlightened system. But I want to make clear that doesn't mean that we're soft or that I'm soft about it. I supported the mandatory minimum sentencing and the matrix system for parole.
The last question. Governor, greater conservation efforts have been a recurrent theme in Oregon's energy debates. What should be the state's role in promoting energy conservation? What measures do you recommend?
The state, I made my recommendations to the last session of the legislature, and the state has some of the strongest conservation measures of any state in the nation, and this is recognized by Mr. Schlesinger, the director of the Department of Energy. We've done a tremendous amount in Oregon. That doesn't mean we've done enough. We have to keep working. We have tremendous numbers of houses that need to be insulated, and the cheapest electricity that we can provide for the needs of Oregon is the electricity that's wasted in the attics of people's homes. And I'll continue to work to see to it that we conduct an aggressive program of conserving energy in the state of Oregon, because I believe in it.
Senator?
Conservation is possible, and we must make it possible. We must make it so Oregonians, in fact, can economically and are willing to conserve energy. It is an alternative. But I get back to what I'd said at the beginning, that we need to get into alternatives, which is part of the program, and we need to get those renewable resources, as we've discussed, particularly solar, and we must make it possible for many Oregonians who want to use solar, by research finding ways it can be done at lesser expense. They will do that. Then we can extend our energy way out into the future for our children and their children's children, and that's what we ought to be doing now.
Thank you very much. We're now ready to move to the closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to make a closing statement from the podium. Senator Atiyeh, you're first.
When I opened, I told you what I've been saying to Oregonians, not just in this room. And I've been speaking not from prepared text, but from my heart and from my experience, both as a small businessman and as a 20-year hardworking legislator. During and since the primary, I've been in every county in Oregon, in towns from Portland to Prairie City, now over 30,000 miles. Miles, however, that represent going to where Oregonians are. Why was I nominated? Why will I be elected governor of Oregon? Because people heard Victor Atiyeh, and it sounded as if they were talking. That is the way they want it. That is the way it should be. Victor Atiyeh represents a genuine change in attitude of government, a hope for the future where people, in fact, will be represented, a hope for the future of Oregon where we can and will have the dream we can afford, a new way of thinking, a new brand of government, a government that the people of Oregon will say with confidence is our government. The time is here, the time is now, and it's time for Atiyeh. Thank you.
Governor Straub.
My wife and I came to Oregon by choice at the end of World War II, and we came to Oregon after studying other states in the nation, and we came to Oregon very deliberately for very specific reasons. We came because of its beauty, because of its openness, because of its wonderful rivers, because of the spirit of the people that live in this state, and because of the high level of beauty and environmental quality that existed in the state of Oregon. I love Oregon, and during the 25 years that I've been in political activity, I've strived to save and to preserve those qualities of Oregon that I think are so important. That's why I've walked the beaches of Oregon to keep them in public ownership. That's why I've fought to keep the highways off the beaches in the Pacific City area. That's why I've worked since 1965 to clean up the Willamette River. That's why I've worked to develop a Willamette Greenway in Oregon. That's why I've worked in the past to support land use planning, and that's why I support land use planning today and why I'm opposed to ballot measure number 10. This is why I hope the people of Oregon will honor me with another 4 years in the governor's office so that I can continue to work to keep progress moving in Oregon, so that I can continue to work for the balance that is so important in Oregon between industry and environment. This is so I can continue to work to keep Oregon, Oregon.
The privilege of being a City Club member and the privilege of being an Oregonian, I think, have come together today for all of us here. Thank you very much. Appreciate your attendance. Before we close, I'd like to just share one question with the two candidates that we took out of the file and didn't give to them, but they might want to ponder on their way out. The question was, what steps would you take as governor to keep Bill Walton in Oregon? We are adjourned.
Thanks, Ogden. Thank you. Fred, thanks.
Probably too bad they didn't get to answer that question.
They're probably glad they didn't.
We've just watched the debate live from the City Club between Senator Atiyeh, who was a candidate, GOP candidate for governor, and of course the incumbent Governor Bob Straub. I did notice there were some differences, and we did have to sort of look for them.
I think you look for style as much as anything in this, Ivan. The differences on the issues, I kept track of issue differences, and other than the obvious issue on the issue of Measure 6 and the whole property tax thing, there were not a great deal of significant differences. The biggest difference, I think, and I think the governor tried very hard to paint this difference, was a difference in style of leadership. Coming on very strong, accusing Senator Atiyeh of waffling. Atiyeh, on the other hand, seeming to try to capture the mood of the times with a more, the idea that he would be a more passive governor. He would listen to the people and let them come to him rather than on the stump advocating programs. Straub then coming back and closing with a theme, Ivan, if I'm not mistaken, isn't that Keep Oregon, Oregon? Isn't that one of the old McCall themes?
It seems we've heard it before.
I think we have. Obviously attempting to be in
the Governor
continuity.
Straub has always been a strong environmentalist.
And stressing that again, stressing his role there. Atiyeh, I think, suspecting that maybe Oregonians are changing a little, and maybe they don't want the next governor to be in the same mold as Straub, McCall, and Hatfield, an activist, upfront governor. Maybe they want something different.
We'll find the answers in November. And thank you for watching.